in office continues. Mureni Mwangi, KTN News.
Right, the Hustlers Fund. How soon can it be activated? A lot of people are looking for it, especially us as the hustlers. We're looking forward to this 50 billion shilling fund. But a good place to begin our discussion tonight, because the dust has settled in the 2022 general election. And right now it's down to the real work, and of course the government must be set up. So tonight, to have the discussion, is my friend Harriet Chigai, advocate. Asante sana. Who knew you'd be here for the grand finale?
Only you did.
No. You. If you didn't ignore me during the election time, probably you'll not be here tonight. Thank you so much, Harriet, for coming.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Asante sana from Oxfam Country Director. Thank you so much for coming tonight. Also, grand finale, you are in KIVUMBI, right?
Yes.
Several of them, including Harriet. But first time on KIVUMBI, Mheshimiwa.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Mohammed Hussein Gabo. Thank you so much for coming tonight. And of course, our discussion begins tonight where that story leaves it. The government of Kenya is broke, no doubt. They say 93 million. Was it 93 or 97 million that was found in the public coffers? That only. And today, very interestingly, Moses Wetangula, the 13th Parliament Speaker, says that he's going to speak to SRC, ladies and gentlemen, to ensure that the allowances that were scrapped just before the election return to Parliament so that they can benefit. Let me start with the lady. Your take on the fact that the government is very broke, according to them, and the fact that Parliament is already saying, you know what, we need back these allowances.
Well, thank you very much for having me here tonight. First, it's very disturbing for us to hear that the government is that broke, because the question then is, where are we going to get this money that is going to run government for the next few months before the current government settles? Remember, the financial year for 2022-2023, the budget was already set, not unless also we are looking at reviewing that budget again, either downwards or upwards. But the question then is, where are we getting this money? It's also very disturbing to hear that we're already making such demands before we get to understand or we get to know exactly where this money is coming from. And for that, I think it's important that there's proper audit and analysis to understand where are we as a government, where do we want to go, and how does that then fit within the plan that we have set as a government. I want to be sure, or rather I would wish to be assured as a Kenyan, that all systems go, that despite the fact that it's being reported that the government is broke as we speak, the question then is, where are we going to draw the funds? And I want to believe part of savings is actually to reduce wastage.
Okay.
If we can be agreeable that we reduce wastage up to a certain level, then we'll be able to save some funds for us to be able to utilize the same in areas where we actually need those monies.
Okay, but Harriet, your question presupposes that indeed the government is broke. What if they're not broke?
You see, the question is, that is what we are told. We are not certain that the government is broke. And that is why
this the first time was Gerard Gay as senator.
Well, with that in mind, then we need to ascertain why the government coffers are empty. That's the starting point.
Okay. We are going to talk more about that preposition also from Parliament. But let me talk to a member of Parliament. He was a former member of Parliament. The first thing that members of Parliament are demanding is for increase or for the allowances to be restored. But don't talk about that. Talk to me about a broke government. Do you believe that we are indeed broke and we are not able to run our affairs?
Well, thanks for the invite. I'm not sure about that. Politicians are making statements here and there, roadside statements. We need to have an audit to check whether the government is broke or not. So I cannot ascertain that
if the government is broke or not.
Yes.
Yeah.
If it is broke, we'll know very soon.
But the deputy president himself has also said that they found an empty government. During inauguration, he said, in spite of the fact that inauguration took about 200 million shillings.
Well, I've told you those are statements which have been made. I think as a financial, we need to understand, get deep into this. Kenya has money. Where has the money gone? Who has gone with the money? Are there money that has stashed out of this country? Are there people who believe have taken the money? So basically, I will not accuse anybody, and I will not be speaking of a broke government. I know the government is running. We demand to know where our money is.
If at all it's true.
If at all it is true, they are broke, then how will we be running this government? We have loans to pay. We have work to start. We have the Hustlers Fund. We have been told that 7.8 billion Kenya shillings was being paid to 4 or 5 companies, oil companies. That subsidy is gone. We've reduced fertilizers, prices of fertilizers from 7,500 to 3,500.
Actually, 6,500.
From 6,500 to 3,500.
Yes.
So it's a subsidy that which needs money. So basically, working on those figures, agreeing that we have that will happen. The fertilizers are almost arriving, and saying that the government is broke. For me, it doesn't add up.
It doesn't make sense.
Yes.
Okay, and especially, I think I tend to agree with both of you before I even speak to Dr. Kitui. The fact that it's coming from politicians on a podium also, we might take it with a pinch of salt. But the truth is the truth. It is what it is, Dr. Kitui.
No, thanks for having me. I think we have to place the whole conversations around a broke government within context. And I think, as Harriet has said, beside the government having the responsibility to run government as it is, the Ruto government is also coming to power at a time when we are seeing the worst drought in the country for the past 40 years. It's predicted that the short trains are also going to fail. So we're going to see a 5 successive failed season. With the subsidy of fuel going, we're seeing all the food prices going up. So we really have this worsening poverty, inequality, and misery of so many Kenyans. In the arid and semi-arid lands, we have about 4.1 million people who have been food insecure, who require immediate water and food support. And I think everyone was looking to the bottom-up approach really to change things to the better, to reduce the misery of some of the Kenyans who are there. So I think the first thing that the politicians should be saying is that the government is broke, because I think when they promised a bottom-up model to improving the lives of Kenyans, is they did that from a very knowledgeable perspective. They were in government. That's a deputy president. I'm sure he knew how much was in the coffers as well from his position as a deputy president. So I think as Kenyans, we are expecting that the cost of living will go down. We expect that it will create an enabling environment for the private sector to create jobs. We also expect him to sort out the mess in the health, education, and social protection field. So the government, I think, has to find ways to raise those resources or to secure those resources to provide some of these things. I think I always find it surprising that the government get broke. I think you and I can get broke because you have your income, then you budget with the income you have. The government, first of all, sits down and develops what they want to spend on, and then they go out to look for the money. So I'm sure the economists who sat down and developed the bottom-up strategy will help the current government to raise resources to deliver some of those promises that they have made from that bottom-up approach.
Okay. What they're asking, I know we'll talk about members of parliament because this is not the first time we're seeing the bad behavior, but they are already also asking for time. Does that also, Harriet, lend credence that things may not just be good, or they're simply asking for time? Yesterday, I had the deputy president tell my colleague, Sophia Wanuna, that, we're just 5 days in office, like cut us some slack, give us time. But the fact that they were going into a government with reality in their head, they were part of the government, and they're asking for time. Does it lend credence that this could be true and we should actually cut them some slack, push back kidogo, we allow them to establish?
If you ask me, it is a bit too early. 5-10 days into office, it is important for us to allow members of parliament to settle in. Remember, we have those members of parliament who have been there. They've been in office before. So they understand how government runs. They understand how parliament, the house operates. They understand government structures. But we also have members of parliament who are new in office. So we need to give them time for them to go through the proper induction, for them to settle in. Also remember, the shock that parliamentarians are met with is the fact that CDF was actually struck out.
That one also, they said they will try and bring it back.
Yes. But you see, as it is right now, where are they standing. Also remember, we are just from an election, a very broke election. And we have spent every single coin that we had to run an election. You know, for the first time in the history of this country, we had very few election petitions from members of parliament, governors and senators. We are recording very few. That already tells you the expense sheet for all the political or the politicians who went into the field. They actually expensed their money up to the last coin. It tells you there's no room for a fight even after, because for what? So we are actually talking of a team, and you'll agree with me, almost 80% of the current member of the parliamentarians right now actually new. We have a new face. So we need actually to give them an opportunity for them to settle in. We need to give them an opportunity for them to go through the induction process, because it's a process. You also know that any new office, you also need to learn the culture of that office. So I mean, it's a bit too early. It's a bit too early.
It's a bit too early.
It's a bit too early, yes.
Okay. So you are from the school of thought that we need to give them time.
Let us give them time.
The government,
and
not parliament. The government.
The government.
The government. The government.
Which
because
they
you made
are.
reference to
Which they
parliament.
are, but remember...
What do you mean parliament is government, Harriet?
They are
It's an arm
lawmakers.
of government.
It's an arm of government.
Yes.
Yes.
But
It's an arm of government,
Yes.
and they sit in it. And I'm telling you, they need to be inducted.
that's
They need
happening
to-
currently.
Exactly. And part of the motions is what is happening. You will say this today, and then you'll say, oops, there's actually a process and procedure for that.
For everything.
Yes.
Yes.
And that's what I'm saying. It's important we give them time.
Give them time. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
let's-
for me,
Yeah.
there shall be no vacuum in a government. What we know is, even through the elections, the judiciary was working. It's one of the arms of the government. We expect the executive to work too. So there's no luxury of time. We do not have a luxury of time. Members can continue getting inducted. That will not stop the government from functioning.
KRA should continue
Collecting money.
But there are two
So-
ways of looking at it also. So I think on one side, I think I agree with the president. We need to give them time. Because also what we don't want is, I think the complaint people are having is Ruto becoming an imperialist president? Why is he making a one-man decisions? So for me, I think the time
Where is
that the
that from?
government...
I've not heard that.
I've
I've not heard that. Explain to me. I've not heard
So
that
I think
complaint.
since he was sworn in,
Yes.
the president has made a lot of declarations
Okay.
that you'd think, out of prudence, the cabinet would have to discuss some of those decisions.
Are you
before
making
they are made.
reference to what happened with the withdrawing of recognition or Sahawi?
So there's so many. So that's
because I think that's a reference you're
so
making.
from a diplomatic point of view,
Yes.
I think that's a decision that as well needed to have gone to the cabinet to discuss.
Okay.
But also, yeah, just historically, what did the Uhuru government discuss on this as well? What is the precedence on this before you make such a declaration?
Yeah.
So making that declaration and then reversing it or deleting the Twitter is a bad precedent. Is bad PR as well. There was also the other decision around moving of the port, the inland port, back to Mombasa. I think that looks like something that should have gone to a cabinet to be discussed. But I think what we are saying is that the 2010 constitution anticipates that some of these critical decisions are made by the president through consultation with his cabinet, and actually through even citizen participation as well. So I think for me, the time that the president requires is a time to set up his government in the first place. I think he would have taken time to really make sure that he has put the best people around the room. He has a cabinet, then the cabinet helps him to make some of these weighty matters. On that front, I think he requires time. Okay. But on the other side as well, he's already made some very, very big decisions. So I think once you started making some of these big decisions on the port, on Zawari, on the others as well, then it means that actually you have the capacity to make decisions on other issues that are, even if you're removing subsidies on fuel, for example, and you're introducing subsidies on fertilizer, which means you have the ability to make decisions that can actually reduce the cost of living of Kenyans in the short term.
Where is the place? Where is it?
Think about
I know I'm
the
coming to you,
solutions.
Mweshimiwa, but
Yes.
what is the place of executive decisions? I'm afraid to call them roadside declarations because that's sometimes what they're termed, when you just make decisions. But there's a place for executive decisions. He can make them. They don't need legislation.
No, absolutely. I think there's a place for executive declarations.
Yeah.
But I think also there is the prudence of also having a very strong government around him that helps him making some of these decisions.
You'd want others to spread the weight.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Let me say one thing. You're talking about President Ruto is not a newcomer to this government. So some of the decisions that he's making are well informed. That has been part and parcel of the former government. He understands actually what has been going on in cabinet and all. Remember, he headed that, he heads the government business until the handshake, you remember, until the handshake came in. So he understands some of the declarations he's making is well informed, and these decisions actually are right. Some of the decisions are quite right. Let's take, for example, the KPA issue. Towns have been dying, you've been told. If you read today's Standard, you find that there are more ghost towns which derived their livelihood from the port. For example, trucks carrying containers coming to Mtitu and Day, coming to hotels and all that, sleeping there, buying fuel and all that. All that livelihood has been reduced. Mombasa port has only been reduced to an ocean. The livelihood has been denied. Basically, what the president has said and what has been done is something that has been on discussion for the last 5 years. For the last 10 years, he has been in government. So basically, he knows that such a decision is a good decision. They may not be, they are not, and I'll continue.
Just weigh on that.
He divided it twice. I want him to address, because you divided it into two.
And just
so
to
the
clarify,
first part, yes.
And I think the wisdom is not questioning the wisdom of the presidency. I think I was answering your question around, does the government need time? And I was just trying to place it into the context that some of these decisions he's made, if he really required time to, for example, set up his government and then start looking at some of the solutions, he would have taken time. But he's already started taking some of the decisions already a priori, which means he does not require actually that time if he really wants to make decisions that improves reduces inequality, make sure that people who are least advantaged or being left behind or affected by the drought are actually supported, that he can make those decisions.
Probably then we would have said the decisions such as bringing down the cost of living.
Exactly.
It's going to need a lot of time. You can do it overnight.
Yes.
I don't know if you agree with that.
If I may weigh in, just to add on what he was saying before we lose the point.
Yes.
The Constitution envisages a situation where the president has executive authority.
Yes.
And it is through that executive authority that certain decisions or executive orders are issued. When you look at the government's plan, issues to do with the 100 days delivery by the president, it was clear. I also want to believe the 100 days delivery matrix as a plan was actually well researched and well thought out, because all the ruling class have their advisors and professional advisors in place. So the president was actually fulfilling one of the promises that was made, having been well researched and articulated during their campaigns and discussions. And the three issues, one was actually to reinstate, or rather the judges, to appoint the judges. That was a promise.
Yes.
The other one was the port of Mombasa. And truth be told, Mombasa is a dead town.
Yes.
The reason is why. There are certain decisions you make because, people in Mombasa, the businesses are dead. When you go to Mombasa right now, nothing is moving. The blue economy that we are talking about, if you ask people of Mombasa how many ships have been yachting of late with tourists, it's almost zero.
I haven't heard of any in the last month.
Exactly, thank you. And that economy thrives on service delivery. It's a service economy. So there are some decisions, honestly, even if you wanted to wait for 3 years, even if you want to wait and have your first cabinet, it will not change. The earlier you do it and get the government arms to start working towards it, the better. And I think that's what the president did. Let's move. There is no time to waste on 3 items which are very obvious, and which, even if I make that decision, it's something that most of us as Kenyans should laud and move forward. The question then we need to ask the people of Mombasa is how they embraced that decision. We cannot also run away from the fact that in as much as the port was moved to Naivasha, has it been functional? How viable was that project?
Okay.
Was it well thought out? These are discussions we've had for the last 5-10 years. We've been discussing the port, the moving of the port from Mombasa to Naivasha. So for us to go back to those discussions, to the decision that was made by the president, we cannot keep going
Looking
round
down.
in
Yes.
cycles.
Yes, yes.
We all even know where the port in in Naivasha is wrongly placed. It is common
It's the middle
knowledge.
of nowhere.
It's in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
It is almost private property. It is, I mean, getting even off the CBD of Naivasha to the port is a cost.
Nightmare.
The nightmare of getting from CBD of Naivasha to where the port was placed is as good as you traveling to Nairobi. You'll arrive in Nairobi before you get to that port.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Where it ends?
You need to go. You need to,
I
to
just
take
see
the
it
road
crossing
trip.
before Suswa somewhere and then the other side.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the infrastructure, the thinking behind the port, the thinking behind the railway was a genius idea. But the question is, was it the right time? Was the infrastructure well placed?
Okay.
Was it going to
Harriet-
work?
Harriet-
Is
Harriet-
it working?
Harriet, my
the
problem-
cost-benefit analysis
Yeah.
in terms of where we are, where we want to take the country, and whether that port is serving Kenyans.
My challenge with what we're saying tonight, and I agree entirely with most things you say, but the challenge is there is a lot that we discussed on this table during the campaigns.
Yes.
There are a lot that were said, but then there's a reality check for the government right now that they are sitting in power and they have the vantage place to see some of these things. So if I would agree with Dr. Kitui partly is it's time that you just sit back and get people in the government who can help you look critically at this. Instead of making the decisions right now, why don't we set up a government, have a government in place, everyone with their own docket. They can look critically at some of the things that were said during the campaigns, and the most realistic ones can be ticked. Right?
Good
and
point.
then we move, yes.
Good point, and I agree with you. But also remember, in most cases, we sit and imagine that the government stops with a new government. I can assure you, the government officers seated behind those desks are brilliant people. I can assure you they work round the clock. If you allow them that opportunity to work, and I think they've been given that opportunity,
Okay.
they will deliver. So it's an issue of when do we get started? Should we wait? The president is now in the UK. Do you want to tell me the country should stop because the president has left, to wait for him to
Okay.
come back, for
I-
certain meetings to take place, for certain activities to kickstart? It's a good start. Executive order has been issued. Get to work.
Okay.
This is where we want to go.
Okay.
Then
Okay.
how do we arrive there?
that point.
And I think that is where we started. Fine, we said we're going to do this. We need the port back in Mombasa. Now, the Ministry of Transport and all the other ministries that need to facilitate this to happen, they have to put
Get
their
into
heads
play.
together
I get you.
and
I
fit
get you,
the work
Harriet.
and
Yeah.
ensure that everything
We
is
need,
moving.
we need to conclude this because otherwise we won't go to the rest. Mheshimiwa, you wanted to say something?
Yes, the reality checks are there. For example, remember our deputy president said they didn't know that what actually they were going to see in the economy was as bad as it is. They knew only very little of it. They imagined, and even I, as a Kenyan, I imagined, okay, Kenyan's economy not bad enough. Okay, it's bad, but not
the
as bad as
ICU.
what I thought it was in ICU.
No,
But
they
we are
said
being told now it is dead.
Yes.
So
Can't
these
be
are reality
resuscitated.
checks.
Yeah.
So
Which means we're starting afresh as a country. That's the
Yes,
import
yes,
of that pronouncement.
exactly.
Yeah.
So basically, I'm glad that some executive orders are given, and the country has to run. Some executive orders were given on what is now being done. For example, again, let me go back to the port of Mombasa. It was an executive order. You didn't have to have your all ministers sitting around to make that decision. What's wrong with a new president, reversing the same using an executive order? Time is not of essence here for me.
What if it's just because it was a campaign promise, Mheshimiwa? What if he just did it because it was a campaign promise? Because I remember the deputy president then, William Ruto, sitting at an interview with a media house, said that if he's elected president, on day one, he will appoint the judges. And on day one, he appointed the judges. What if this was also a pledge that was given during the campaign?
Thank
I'm
you
just
so
being
much.
a devil's advocate in this.
And I think that is a good thing, that politicians, what they promise during the time of campaign must be kept. The president has shown a very good example that he's kept his promises.
What if it's a populist idea during the campaign, Mheshimiwa? Like I'll reduce the price of unga from 200 to 100. Logically, you realize when you sit there, hey, I cannot do this in the short period I thought.
No, the president, I don't think he spoke only on a short term. This is a 5-year plan. Let's see what we can do within 100 days.
Is urgent like this, Mheshimiwa.
I know, and that's why the fertilizers are there. We are now going to see the cost of production must decrease. This is what we are thinking. But basically, this may not be achieved within the 100 days.
100 days, yes.
It may not.
It's one of the reality checks.
Yes, that is one
impossible.
of them.
Yes.
But I can assure you, there's a possibility within the next 6 months. That could happen, because even if we give fertilizers, if you need to, maize to grow and, support the farmers, this will take time. So for me, I believe
6 months is 200 days. If we break
Actually,
it
Ken,
down.
if
I
you
need to
ask
talk
me,
to Dr.
if you
Yeah.
ask
That's a
me on
reality.
the
It's a
issue-
reality.
Yes,
It's a reality.
yeah.
On the issue of
Can I hear
Bunga?
from Dr. Then I come to
Okay,
you? Yes.
okay.
No, I think it's just to be careful what we are asking for. And I think you can't run a country on executive orders. I think it's okay what the president is doing, and he has all the powers in the constitution to do that. But I think if it was to me, I would say first things first. The priority would have been to pause and set in place a cabinet that helps you run this thing. I think that should be a first thing that the president should have focused on. I'm sure he's working on it as well, but I think there are some things that were not very, very urgent. They could have waited. And I think the precedence that sets is, we have a 2010 constitution that really devolves a lot of these decisions and bestows the power to the people. And I think for me, most of these decisions should still go through public participation and the citizen participation as a key process as well, but also just the ability that you formed a government, and then the government is helping you think through about what should come first and what should follow next. So I think for me that's very, very important to reinforce, that we should not go down the road where we want again a very powerful president that who can make some of these decisions without necessarily the citizen participation on some of the critical aspects. And I say that because I think when you look at some of the decisions that have been made, for example, on the reduction of the subsidy, on the introduction of subsidy in fertilizer, that's going to take a long term.
The farmers are already saying that it should not affect this because there was high cost of input, so it can start the next.
Yes,
they've already said that today.
So I think if the short trains do not fail, then maybe you're looking at early 2023 before we have lower food.
Where does that leave the expectations, Daktari, the expectations of the wananchi?
But I think the expectations of wananchi was that the cost of living would reduce as much as possible.
Like that.
But I think what we're going to see is that probably the cost of living is going to go up before goes up.
It's already
going up before it starts going down as well. But also when you look at the policy element as well, we have county governments in place, and I think we shouldn't really forget the county governments. And I think in the spirit of devolution as well, agriculture is a devolved function.
Let's give it to the...
And I think in 2013, a lot of the functions that relate to agriculture, whether it's livestock, fisheries, marketing, cooperatives, were devolved. But those functions, money has never followed that functions. When you look at the budgets, for example, I think it was 2.4% of the national budget was put in agriculture in the year 2021-22. So what's the place of the county governments in trying to improve the food security as well? And how do we facilitate the county governments to be on the leadership? Because that's a devolved function as well. And I think for me, some of these decisions around food security, reduction of cost of living, should be an all-government consultative process of making. And I think for me, it stands a very better chance of being successful.
As it should.
As it should, really.
As it should. All right. Conclude for us, yes, we need to move on.
I just wanted to say that Kenyans' expectations will still remain high, but they need to give the government an opportunity to actually deliver. The cost of living is a work in progress. It's not going to happen tomorrow. But already, the steps that are already being undertaken to ensure that the cost of living goes down, it's just a matter of time. You've put it rightfully that the current farmers and the amount of money they put in terms of maize plantation, let me use that as an example, it was already high. So we don't expect by mid next year that the prices will have gone down. But that can also go down if, for instance, we buy the maize from farmers and we restock our cereal boards. Remember, when was the last time that government bought maize from farmers? So this is what I'm saying, that we need just to give them a little bit of time.
Yeah.
If you go call Western, or if you're coming from the Western province right now, their maize is green. It's green. It has not even reached the point of harvesting. We are now harvesting green maize. So that means by the time we are harvesting the actual harvest,
2 months,
maybe 2-3 months, mostly in, between October, December drying. But if government can buy that maize directly from farmers, we'll have cushioned, and then advance fertilizer for next plantation season to the farmers. The cost goes down. And what that means, we already have enough in the basket to actually supply.
Assuming we have the money, I need to move on.
But Nijungu, remember, for you to succeed in anything that you want to do, first you must take a risk. First you must have a plan. Have a plan, leap by taking a risk. So we cannot sit and all say, well, it's too expensive, the government coffers are empty. No. We can do it. Push everybody to the limit to perform, to get us where we want to go.
We've taken so much time in this, but
for me, I think this 100 days, the government will put into measures to make sure that food production is in place, measures to improve facilities and operations of port, measures to get money maybe through the KRA. So these measures is what the government is talking and the president is talking that will be put in place in the 100 days. The results, maybe we realize in the next 6 months or so.
6 months or so. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we need to move on with this. And I know in 2013, this was so prominent. Only the deputy president and I will be politicians in this government. The next, everyone else would be a technocrat. Technically, that's what the outgoing president, the retired president, said inside President Ruto's government. What do you say? Don't forget, he said, I want cabinet ministers who can come to parliament to answer questions, not to go to committees, which means he wants to bring back the other system of parliament, right? So there's a way he's thought about this, but from where you sit?
For me, I see this as a hybrid. You can never separate the politicians from what they call ministers or executives. It's difficult because they complement each other. As are making laws, the same laws are being implemented by the technocrats. They need each other. Politicians will always push and try to get their space. The technocrats, whatever decisions they want to make, for example, let's even give an example of the budget making process. Every minister entices the members of parliament, budget committees and all that. How do you separate the two? So there's no divide between a technocrat and our members of parliament. They need each other. They talk to each other. For example, what they're working is, this country is divided into counties and constituencies. This is where the functionalities of those technocrats benefits the society. So an MP is a representative of that people who need services. He understands more of the needs of those people than a technocrat coming from UK, appointed as a minister, not knowing what to understand, but just working with paper and money. The felt need of those people at the county level, at the constituency level, is best understood by a politician.
Okay.
So for me, this hybridity brings a relief because people are wide apart. The executives did their own things. The politicians will always try to, make sure that they are not functional. Their questions were not answered. I was an assistant minister. I used to answer questions. I will be asked, for example, where relief food was going. And I will answer a member of parliament that, for example, in Turkana.
On the floor?
On the floor of the
parliament?
House. Yes, on 10th parliament. We could answer those questions. And the technocrats will always give you the answers. But as a minister, you need to make sure you are able to answer those questions because they represent the interest of the people. What will be the use of a member of parliament, just being a member of parliament, and you don't know what a minister is doing?
Okay. Do we need a legislation for this, Harriet? do we need a change of legislation? Do we need an amendment of some law in order to allow cabinet secretaries to go to the floor of the House to answer questions?
Well, not necessarily. That has to go through the standing orders in Parliament. And I also want to look at it from a different perspective in terms of why should we have the cabinet or ministers answering questions in Parliament. There's the question of ownership and vibrancy within the various dockets that we have. For instance, Ministry of Agriculture. We all know who the minister is, but we see them once in a while giving
press conferences.
But let us move from press conferences to full ownership of these dockets, so that when I stand and say, this was our plan in this ministry, this is how far we have gone, these are the gaps, and this is how we would wish to address these issues. You have given more meat to that ministry, and in terms of ownership and accountability to the Kenyan citizens, vis-a-vis always sitting behind those desks, and even Kenyans don't understand what is happening. A best approach, I would use agriculture, because if we get agriculture well, we'll have dealt with a big problem in terms of employment and in terms of improving the Kenyan economy. Because Kenya, as it is right now, if we properly restructure agriculture and trade, not only with ourselves but even with our neighboring countries, we will really, really perform in terms of agriculture. So we then need to move from a boring kind of setup when it comes to the cabinet to now a vibrant cabinet where they have the cabinet time in Parliament. What that means is you'll always be prepared, you'll always be at your best, and you'll always follow through a script that you present in Parliament. So for me, I think it's a new hybrid. I'm also interested as a Kenyan to see how it's going to work. And I actually see a lot of positive in terms of positive drive towards delivery of a strategic plan that is already put in place. Yeah.
You think it will work?
I think it will work.
I think I just want to agree with Mohammed. It's a hybrid, and I say that from the point of view I come from, because my main interest is really on about how can we reduce inequality, for example. How do we make sure that the least advantaged in society are not left behind? And these are political issues. They are not technocratic issues. And technocratic management, regardless of how intelligent and smart it is, cannot deal with some of these structural inequalities. And I think when you look at what the Kenya Kwanza government has promised during the campaigns, the bottom-up approach, the ability to create jobs and everything, these are political declarations. So I think for me, for you to be an effective cabinet secretary, there has to be that mix of being a politician, because these are political decisions you are making, but also being a technocrat. But also the government is full of technocrats. So I think when you look at the principal secretaries and the team, those are the technocrats that are supposed to crack their heads to think about how do we effectively deliver the mandate, this political mandate, at our desks. So I think you want someone like the president, like Ruto, surrounded by a cabinet secretary, a cabinet team that is able to be both political and technocratic. And I think for me the bias is towards really the political element, especially if they have to deliver on the Kenya Kwanza manifesto. The problem with the technocratic, sometimes if you have a very huge domination of technocrats, nothing against the technocrats really, is some of these political issues like inequality, making sure that the least advantaged do not lose. For example, in Kenya, we are one of the wealthy countries, and we were talking with Mohammed earlier on. There is no reason why in this country someone should go to bed hungry. There is no reason why someone should not have a roof over their head. There is no reason why someone should go into poverty paying for healthcare. There is no reason why social protection should not work. But it's because we have a lot of trickle-down technocratic solutions that do not work. So some of these commitments that the president has made are very, very political, and I think having a balanced political technocratic cabinet to help him deliver on that is a good thing. So I think for me the balance is a good one, as I think.
And the fact that he's looking, he's looking inside the elected members, the loyal members. There was a report in the Star, for example, of the number of elected leaders who would resign to join his cabinet. I mean, it's his decision at the end of the day, but that makes, I mean, you can, and also as you comment on that, comment about the CSS who would really want to continue with him. I know Professor Magoha has said that. I know Najib Balala, the way he's talking, that looks like his language. So comment about that.
Well, any government that comes to power wants to maintain that power, especially when in our constitution we have a two-term president of 5 years. So definitely the president will be looking at his very loyal friends, people who stuck with him during those years when he was in Kano, time he was in ODM, when he went to URP, Jubilee. Most of these are close confidants and people who have survived it. They may not be technocrats, but they delivered the seat. They delivered the seat.
That was my question, at the expense of performance.
Performance does not lie with a technocrat. Performance is at individual level. I can assure you the ministers which we have in 2007 to 2013 performed more than what you call technocrats. Today, these are bookwormers, professors, people who are not in reality with the ground. My brother has just said that you really need to understand and appeal to the common man at the ground. There's a big gap between these politicians who live with the people, who understand them, their culture and how they live, than appointed professors from universities who will read books to us and tell us this is what the economy should do, this is what. They are not with the reality. We've just been talking about the reality check. So basically, do these bookwormers understand what is on the ground? So for me, the answer is no. I'll rather prefer people who have been tested, who have been 5 times in parliament, 3 times in parliament, who their people have confidence. Why are they being elected 3 to 4 times? And we look at these people. Give an example of my brother Duale. He understands Gariza better than a minister, a professor from the University of Nairobi who has been made a minister. So basically, for me, this loyalism, people who understand the culture, the problem of the Hustler Nation makes more sense to me. So I do agree that we need to have a kind of a hybrid. Technocrats should understand how to translate the policy into reality. For us, we will want to understand how our people live, how we should feed them, and of course how he can continue with his presidency.
It's sure a very tough balancing act. Now that you've touched on that,
definitely
if I
it
may,
is. Let me
if
just
I may, okay.
Sorry.
No, go finish.
Yes, it's a tough balancing act
between being a loyal person and someone who can deliver your vision, and the people who helped you go to power. I mean, it's so tough. At the end of the day, something has to give, something has to be compromised.
As I told you, we need a hybrid. Let the technocrats deliver. Let the ministers and other people be people who will be supporting the president politically and to keep in power.
Okay, all right.
Just to weigh on that, for me, I would look at it from the DNA of leadership. Just like in our homes, they normally say it's the father who's the head. So the question then is, how are all the other children behaving around this leadership? There's a script, there's a family script that you must follow. Sunday you must go to church, Friday you must go to the mosque. Those are family rules. The DNA of a family sits very well with the parents. So let's now bring it now to the leadership. A cabinet should be a team of soldiers who can actually deliver the manifesto, or rather the larger plan as set out. It must be in your DNA. You must sleep, you must go to bed and wake up thinking about how that plan is going to be realized. That is why you will create that balance. When you look at, and for me, I would look at leaders more vis-a-vis technocrats in that area.
Okay.
Yes.
Why do I say that? You have a government that is running. The current ministers are still in office. They have not been changed. But things are still moving. If they have stalled, maybe it's because all of us are waiting for executive order number 1 or number 2. But it will not mean the government will stop because Mijungu here has been made the Minister of ICT or Communications. It means you have to fit into the DNA of the trickle-down effect. What are the end results?
Okay.
What do we want? What was the plan? In the next 4-5 years, what do we as government want to achieve? Remember, it stops being individualistic. It becomes a collective responsibility. And that is why whoever is appointed as a minister must own that docket and reflect the same in terms of where have we come as government, where are we right now, and what is the plan, where are we going?
Okay.
This plan that we have, how long is it going to take for us to deliver the plan? What are the results? What are the gaps? You've rightfully put it, and I like the discussion because we have to be alive to the fact that this journey is not going to be a one-day journey. It's going to be a long journey. And remember, just like any other corporate entity or any other business, you can have a 5-year plan, and then you realize you can actually realize that plan in 2 years.
Yeah.
Then that frees your budget and frees your time
For some other things. Okay.
That's why after 2 years you review.
Yeah.
You can also have a 5-year plan, and then you realize, oops,
10.
because of the gaps and the many barriers we have, we need
Let's
to
push
extend time. So it's the same thing.
Okay.
It's just about leadership. Who are the drivers?
Okay.
And who are the people who are supporting
That vision.
So it is very important to look at it
I
from
think
that side.
unless you have a point on that, just
Yes.
briefly, because I need to touch on something before we run out of time.
Just briefly in closing, and I think it goes back to the issue about the political nature of decision making in the country, because when you look at our constitution, again, I have to re-emphasize this, it allows for citizen participation. I think we've seen the technocratic cabinet secretaries struggle with listening to the common mwananchi's ideas because they know it all anyway. Who are you to tell me? You are a very ordinary person, you know. And I think for me is you require a cabinet that is really in touch with the citizens, that they agree that it's actually virtuous to go out and listen to what Kenyans want. And I think we've seen recently some bills proposed that Kenyans protested because they didn't agree with them. So one of them, especially in the food industry, the Seeds and Plant Varieties Act, for example, that wanted to actually criminalize just simple things like my grandmother in the village sharing her seeds with the neighbors, so to allow the big multinationals to come and patent some of the seeds that communities have used in the community. You require a politician to actually sit in the cabinet and say, no way, there's no way we can disenfranchise subsistence farming in the communities, the traditional seed sharing practices. But technocrats felt that actually that is modernizing agriculture, is commercializing agriculture. So I think for me there's a very good reason for, and I think I agree with Harriet actually, I think the president should actually choose leaders to be at that place. And I think it's the political leaders who believe that they have to be in touch with the reality of the Kenyans and not assume that they know and they have all the answers to all the Kenyans' problems.
So
because I think it undermines
people who
that
understand.
citizen participation element that is prescribed in the Constitution.
Okay, so I see we have a few minutes, and I wanted to touch on two things, and one is important. The reason why I wanted to touch on this nomination fiasco is because of you at the helm of Kenya National
Council for Persons with Disability.
You saw what happened in Kericho, for example. So as you touch on that,
I have
also
a whole list.
You
have a whole list
of.
I want to give you that on the same. Kericho is just an example, just a single example.
So just briefly, because we're running out of time, plus after that, comment on the place of the opposition, because it looks like the opposition has resigned to their fate and said, you know what, we will accept, we will check the government. So let's talk about nomination.
21 counties failed to comply with the affirmative action policy on nominations of PWD representatives. So we have a list of shame of 21 counties, and allow me to mention them very quickly if you don't mind.
If that list is certain and confirmed, if
you
it's
need
not,
to confirm. You need to confirm, and I can assure you this list is certain. You can confirm.
21 is 21 seconds. Okay.
Okay, let me just say 21 so that you're safe and you're on national TV.
Yes.
Remember, the Constitution of Kenya provides. The Constitution of Kenya protects all Kenyans from discrimination. Article 10 stipulates human dignity, equity, social justice, inclusiveness, and protection of marginalized groups as a national value and principle of governance. Just to go direct to the Article 97 and 98 gives express provision for representation of persons with a disability at the National Assembly, Senate, and at the county assemblies. Similarly, at the county assemblies legislatures, pursuant to Article 177 of the Constitution, in this article of the Constitution, a county assembly shall include at least 4 members with disabilities, including 2 men and 2 women, to represent persons with disability in the county assembly. 21 of these counties have not complied with this. It is an irregularity. It's against the Kenyan Constitution. And as a former CEO of the National Council of Persons with Disability, we demand that these assemblies cannot be sworn. So we definitely going there until they comply.
What are you doing? Are you going to court because you have the numbers?
Yes, we have the numbers. We're going to court. Remember, in 2017, there were 17. Today, another 4 have increased. There are 21.
Are there counties that are recurring with this?
Yes, Isiolo is a good example. Marsabit, Turkana, Kilifi, Taita Wajir, Marsabit, Meru, Tharaka Nithi, Machakos, Makueni, Kericho, West Pokot, Trans Nzoia, Uasin Gishu, Baringo, Laikipia, Narok, Kwale, Bungoma, Nyamira, and our big city, Nairobi.
Nairobi is not also
So this is not acceptable. It's a constitutional mandate for this to have their seats. People have been filling those seats, I do not want to use bad words, but with their close confidence, friends, assistants, etc. So basically what we are at the expense of a person with a disability. Tell me, how do you feel when you exchange a person with a disability with your girlfriend? Tell me.
Is it proven? It's not proven. It's just speculated.
I mean, these are kinds of morals. Lack of morals for Kenya. So let's be honest.
But we saw a few of them come out on television and actually complain about this. So it's not far-fetched. The only thing we can't authenticate and verify on this table tonight is that someone's girlfriend has been nominated in place of a person with disability.
I cannot say that. But I'm simply saying that persons with disabilities have not been nominated to 21 county assemblies. That's a fact.
That's a fact. Harriet, is there recourse for this? I mean, the nomination list, my problem is this. The nomination list is usually sent to the register way ahead of time, and it's deposited and, I think, sealed. By the time the nominations are happening, that list is already there. So didn't they see that there are other names? Because you can't sneak a name in there legally. How did it happen?
Well, first, it's very unfortunate because I want to believe by the time the nomination lists go out, and I remember IEBC actually returned the lists the first time so that parties can be compliant.
Yes.
The question then is, at what point was the nominations or nominated persons failed to appear on the final list? What really happened? Because even in the most affected counties, I'm sure the persons with disability names were actually featured. And you saw the comparisons. So the question then, at what point did that change? Was it at the party level or was it at a different office? Number one. Number two, I want to believe there's a way of identifying persons with disability in such an exercise. They have a certificate, I want to believe. Because even within KRA, it's a quick reference. It's a quick reference. You can even check with KRA. KRA will tell you we have this name in our database. So the question then is, at what point did the names change and switch? So that's the question that we need to ask ourselves, because I want to believe the political parties were compliant. But at some point, the names changed. Because I remember the list going back. I'm making that assumption.
True.
I am not certain about it, but logically thinking, I want to believe that the political parties complied once the initial list was sent back. The question then is, at what point did the list change? And why, even at the point of nominations and gazettement, there was no proper check to actually ascertain that this name we have been given for a person with disability is actually one, because they submitted proper papers. That is why their names appeared there in the first place. So those are gaps that actually you need to follow through so that next elections it doesn't repeat.
No, they're going to court
No,
right
it's not.
away.
Which
They're
is
not
okay.
waiting for
They
it.
should go
Yeah.
to
It's
court
not about.
because
It's not about
the
next
next
election.
election. It's
We're
now.
not allowing this to go.
and that's what I'm
Simple as
saying.
that.
It has happened these elections. It
Oh,
should
yeah.
not
So
happen in the
happen the
next.
next
It has
election,
happened in
more
one
vigilant.
election, 2017.
Now
It
happens
has happened
again.
It
again.
happened 2022.
So what measures are we putting in place to ensure
ensure
it doesn't have?
2027 it doesn't happen. Yes.
Yeah.
Good way to put
That-
it.
that-
Maybe
that's
just a
how-
question
that's
to
how I'm
Harriet,
looking at it.
actually.
Yes.
What are the legal recourse?
Force. Yeah.
Does the,
Courts.
the laws anticipate that probably if the nominations are not handled in a good way, like the swearing in does not happen for those parties, for example, there must be a
Can you
legal
block
there must be
swearing?
a legal framework.
Yeah,
to,
of course, there's a legal recourse,
Yes.
and that is the court way. It's only the
Yes.
court, by a
That you
court
can
order,
make a-
that you
a
can actually
decision.
stop the swearing-in process.
And
And,
I-
I'm
and I-
wondering, you've taken too long.
Yeah.
Now,
I've not
now,
heard of that case.
These nominations just came 5 days ago.
Okay.
They are taking advantage that persons with the disabilities, these are people who already, have
Are
no money,
disadvantaged, yeah.
You
are
can go
disadvantaged. So we need your pro bono.
Yeah.
Madam, this is the time that
That's
we
what I'm
need your
saying.
services.
You're taking
Too
too
long.
long.
Thank you.
She's fairly brief.
Thank you. Thank you. Because
Eh?
that's one of the things in the act of the National Council that lawyers have volunteered and they're ready to volunteer as a pro bono for this. It's a good cause.
But
Thank you.
Harry doesn't eat stone.
Okay.
So as we wind up, I'll give you a minute each to agree or disagree with the notion of the place of the opposition in this government. Do you believe ultimately there could be a handshake at the end of it? I know the president has said, no way, I'm not doing this.
The president has said no way, and I think for me it should be no way. We need a very strong opposition. The president has invited critics. The president has invited a strong opposition. He said they will deliver as a government, and for them to deliver, they want to be checked. And I think he's sincere with that invitation.
Yes.
So I think for me, the challenge really is in the opposition to really stand up and put the government in check. I think it's been a shame seeing that we have the political class who are elected on the Azimio side, who instead of actually showing their leadership from the opposition benches, they are now moving the floor to be in government. But I think for me, the president means really, or he seems to actually mean that there's not going to be a handshake, and he would like a strong opposition. And I think for me, there's a very, very good case to have a strong oppositions for all the obvious reasons.
And I know you mentioned a lot of people who've spent a lot of time in parliament, 2, 3, 4 time members of parliament. But for me, I don't know where they forget their work and they start hobnobbing with the government, because this is an arm that should be independent. And once they get into parliament, they're members of parliament, regardless of where they stand. They stand for Kenya at that point. So I don't know where they forget. But Harry, talk to us about that. Yeah, place of opposition. Yeah.
Yeah, it's important we have a strong opposition. And I think for a long time, when you talk about strong opposition, you see an opposition that is always carrying placards, people throwing stones in the streets. And that is why opposition looks like it's such a bad place to be in. But no, we need an opposition that can actually put in place, not limited to just criticism, but positive criticism. We need an opposition that is able to shape government policy. We need an opposition that is able to shape leadership and governance. We need an opposition that is able to take the mantle, and strongly so, and drive the agenda of government from the opposition side. And for me, I think it's good to be in opposition. There's nothing wrong in being in opposition, and the opposition leaders should embrace it. We have seen what the handshake did, good and bad at the same time. But there was a whole lacuna because government went into a slippery, sloppy kind of scenario where the opposition now was already in government. And the question then was, who is checking who? Where is the opposition? The handshake swallowed the place of the opposition to an extent that the opposition leader was now being accused of being in government. And by virtue of that, you have no room to speak on any issue. So for me, a strong opposition is the way to go. In fact, anyone who's willing to take that seat should embrace it.
Wajakoya said he will.
Yeah, if Kalonzo doesn't want it, Wajakoya is there.
Yeah,
so
he said in court. He said in court that day.
So I think it's a good, it's a good thing. It's a good thing.
thank
It's
you.
a good thing.
Okay. And
So
finally,
for me, I totally agree with what they have said. We need checks and balances. We need a strong opposition. That's why we have bad laws, because lack of opposition means you can just get away with anything. You know, nobody checks it. So basically, a strong opposition will check on the government. What you call the roadsides declarations may not happen. Bad laws will not be sneaked in.
When it happens, they'll point it out.
You'll point it out.
Yeah.
And with such an opposition and divergence of views in parties, will definitely improve the service delivery, have good laws for this country. So I do agree that for me, I'll rather prefer to be in an opposition, you know, fight the government, but to make a positive criticism, not criticism to destroy, but to make them strong and have good laws for this land.
Ladies and gentlemen, unless
maybe just a last
30 seconds.
A last point, actually, why even the opposition is very, very critical now, because I think when you look at the parliament now, Kenya Kwanza, if the allegations are true, that they're actually the dominant parliament, the majority in parliament as well. When you look at the division of governments, you expect that the parliament would provide checks to the executive. So as an arm of government, I think you are likely to see the executive and parliament agreeing a lot on many of those issues. So I think our only kind of check will be a very strong opposition. So I think having that, I hope the parliament stands up to the occasion, rises up to the occasion, and checks the executive. But if it fails, without a strong opposition, then I think we
civil society and church. I want to thank you so much for coming tonight, Harriet Shigai. Why do you look like you want 10 seconds? I think we are done. We'll call you for another show. We still have shows on it.
Thank you for allowing us to close Kivumbi.
Yes, grand finale. Chivumbi.
Oh,
Chivumbi.
Chivumbi.
Chivumbi, okay.
So we look forward to the next show. I think Kivumbi has been at the forefront in actually enlightening Kenyans on what is happening. And I think that is the media. The media should actually move more towards that direction in terms of positive educative forms to Kenyans. I think kudos to you. Good job to your team. Good job to your team. It's one of the programs that we actually run home to check and see what is new. So well done.
And watched in Uganda. I don't know by who.
Even in Rwanda,
yes.
It's watched in Rwanda.
Even in Rwanda, we watch Chivumbi.
Yeah, so
thank you
well
so
done.
much. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much,
Thank you, sir.
Dr. for coming. I'm looking forward to more engagements. Remember, Kivumbi is just ending because the dust is settled. But we have to begin to check this government even as the media. So we will definitely be having shows that will still incorporate that. Even if it's not named Kivumbi, trust me, it will be there. And News Hour is there every Wednesday, so you can still come. And you're all my friends. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you, Harriet, and thanks, Daktari. And thank you for watching Chivumbi, the last edition, grand finale. I hope you enjoyed the show, and it begins again whenever we're headed to an election, a year to the election. 2026, hapo karibu na election, we'll do another Kivumbi. But this show will definitely reincarnate into something else, and we'll always have to put the government of the day in check. My name is Ken Mijungo on behalf of the whole team from Kivumbi. We want to thank you for staying with us for almost a year and a month since we started this show. I hope you've enjoyed and shaped the future of this country. Have a good night and God bless.